In this video, we'll be taking a look at the New York city of Schenectady. And first, let's get to the geography. We can see here, as we zoom in on New York State, we have Schenectady, not far from Albany, the capital of New York State, and along that Erie Canal line. And on this channel, I have covered much of that region. If you want to go back into my catalog and check out some of the cities nearby, or the Erie Canal, I did a video on the Erie Canal as well. And we look at the population demographics. Modern day, we're just over 60,000. We go back to the turn of the 20th century. About 30,000 people living in Schenectady. And what I like to do in these videos is bring you a glimpse of the architecture that once existed. Some of it still standing, of course, but much of it gone now as a result of urban renewal. And these are the types of buildings that remain. You can see here we have a date of 1875, at a time when there was just over 10,000 people living there. We also have a date of 1862, less than 10,000 people living there at the time, but they're building these stone structures, we are being led to believe. Of course, you know, if you're familiar with the channel, that I doubt the historical narrative. I think the timeline is all off, and I think the fact that we're seeing dates like these is a misdirection. Before we go any further, let's look at the short clip. The link to the full video will be in the description, just mentioning how that urban renewal process was a large part of Schenectady as well.
Much of the city is underdeveloped or below the poverty line. Near Schenectady's ornate city hall, built in 1931, many of the corners are inhabited by vacant lots. Bad city planning in the 50s and 60s resulted in many buildings being demolished to make it easier for developers to build on those foreclosed lots. Oftentimes, the developers never came, or their projects proved to be failures. Even after the era of demolition, the big project era continued.
Interesting when we observe all the empty lots in that clip, and you tie that in with the urban renewal and the lack of ability and willingness to rebuild the urban renewal, suggesting making something better than it once was, bringing it back to life. In fact, what they did is they were destroying much of the evidence of this old world. Here we can see a locomotive factory in Schenectady, and this is just a small glimpse of a much larger overview, but you can see the quality of construction going on here. And as we pan out, and we can see, we were just looking at this corner here, massive industrial works going on here, and linked up with the railroads, old world transportation. The suggestion here is that we have rail cars, you have rail lines, steamships, and dirigible air travel, all a part of the old world transportation system that was replaced so aggressively by the robber barons in the 20th century. Here we have an armory, very common in the area to have these building designations, these armories. This is a very short shelf life according to the historical narrative. Of course, I don't believe the 1898 portion of this, and quite difficult architectural feat. Not really making sense why you would demolish a building that's only 50 years old, that's built like a castle, when we see castles in other parts of the world that are supposedly have been standing for 1,000 years. Not making a lot of sense. Very wasteful to try to incorporate that into a rational way of thinking. This is another armory that very little information seems to exist on, also in Schenectady. And this is a third armory that is said to have been built in the 30s, the 1930s. And I do believe that anything before what we call World War II is up for discussion. I think we have some sort of timeline overlaying going on here, and it's very difficult for us to envision the past beyond that point. And if you're thinking, well, this guy's crazy, we have written historical documentation of the past, I would direct you to the novel 1984 by George Orwell, in which he suggests and discusses the situation in that book, how they were actively rewriting history in real time, and I suggest that we have undergone a similar process, and he's actually documenting something similar. This is the old Scotia Bridge, looking like two phases. To me, it doesn't look like the wooden portion and the stone portion originally were meant to be together. Stone portion, part of something much larger, is my suggestion. And the Erie Canal, as mentioned earlier, a large part of the narrative here. The Erie Canal narrative, absolutely absurd. If you take even a couple seconds to look into that, you'll find that the bottom falls out of that story. It's just not possible with the means we were said to have had at our disposal at the time. A quick view of the old fire hall, giving you that texture. It's giving you the brick-laden roads and that textured stone, and you have this turret popping out the side of this building here, all indications of much more advanced civilization than what we are told was coming up at the time. And I'd like to take this time as well to let you know I'm going to put a bonus on the back end of this video, a short clip of EddyOknows YouTube channel. He's also on many other platforms. The link to his channel will be in the description. And I wanted to highlight his work here because what he does is he has been exposing the timelines given for many of these structures. We've got very short timelines on a lot of these structures, and he is using an AI voice that he interfaces with, and it eventually gets to the point where the timeline we are given is clearly exposed as absurd. So certainly encourage you to stick around to check that one out and give him a sub. Follow his work. I think it's an important piece of the puzzle in this old world research, and it's a newer tool, relatively newer tool, that I think we can use to help expose much of this. But we'll keep moving on with Schenectady. The YMCA shows up a little bit earlier. We'll keep moving forward. We have a city hall as well, again in the foreground. You're getting the depiction of the wonderful corner turrets, for lack of a better term. Maybe that's not a turret because it doesn't complete its path to the ground, but maybe there's an architectural expert out there that can give me the term for that. It's beautiful nonetheless. But we'll keep moving forward. We have the City Hall, supposedly built in the 30s. So many miraculous structures built in very, very short time periods during that decade, a time when the U.S. was said to have been in a major depression. You've got skyscrapers going up in less than 1 year, and the whole story just seems very difficult to believe. So I think we have a blocker over our perception for some reason. Here you can see the Roman numerals on the clock, and you have the 4 eyes indicating the number 4 rather than the IV that most of us grew up learning in Roman numerals, something that repeats itself as you look into this old world architecture. Nice looking city hall, definitely. And this is just a quick peek at a modern day repair, and you could see we're using the technology we have at our disposal, a crane with the boom, just for this small piece of stone that needs to slip back into there. So try to envision all of this. Maybe not in this particular building. In the 30s, I guess they'll say that they had something similar, but much of this type of construction goes back before much of this technology was invented. So it becomes very far-fetched. And we have the first courthouse, or the I don't know if it's the first, but the previous courthouse, looking overbuilt for that early time period. And it still stands. We have the front view entrance of it. And we have the current courthouse as well, built in during World War. I'm using the French terms here to possibly get around. Well, you know what I mean. And here it is in the modern day, and I guess in the 19-teens, this type of construction was easy. All of these heavy materials, and you can tell we've got lower areas here. That's another thing that Eddie gets into, is exposing the lower reaches of many of these structures. using the AI assistant. Turning our attention to the Edison Hotel, built in 1889, we are being told. That name Edison attached to Mr. Thomas Edison, one of the robber baron inheritors, is my suggestion. Introducing all sorts of technologies through the world's fairs. We've got the light bulbs, electricity. We have his war with Nikola Tesla, the AC/DC current wars. We have the early motion picture as well, and definitely one of those characters that needs to be heavily scrutinized. This is a fantastic looking hotel, and still stands, which is pretty incredible. I don't know. Are we expected to trust these characters? I have questions. I've got a lot of questions. Here it is again. We're looking at a view of the alley with the hotel with that rough stonework in the lower reaches. And as we move forward, we see much of the same architecture repeat itself. It's very, very difficult work to accomplish at a time when we're told that they didn't really have the means to easily erect a lot of this. We're just expected to believe so much of this is manpower, is a result of manpower and hand tools and skill, of course. And often the narrative will tell us will throw a large volume of people at us to explain away how these things were accomplished in such short order. But I don't think so. We're looking at the Edison Company Works, an overview of the grounds here. Existing right up into the modern day, although I'm told it's a shadow of its former self. Anyone from the area that knows any more about this, please put your comments in the description. Always welcome. We have a high school and annex connected by a curious construction here. I could find no other representation of this besides a postcard. Very interesting and unique. And ticking all the boxes really for the types of structures, the designations that these inherited structures were given, the government structures and the churches and all the rest of it. Very strange that you would build a school like this. Not anything close to what we would envision in the modern day. And again, remember, there are lower areas of these buildings that we really don't know about. We don't know how far down a lot of them go. This public library doesn't appear to stand anymore either. No doubt coming from the Carnegie Library collection. A gentleman's club looking like a skyscraper / temple. You've got these interesting poles at the top. You see this sometimes as well. This building still stands as well. And in this case, it appears to be boarded up. And we have the previous version. Just like the hospital. That old stonework again. Unexplained. These are orphan buildings to go along with the orphan narrative. Methodist Church, absolutely spectacular. Another Methodist Church. And Methodist Trinity Church as well. I like these postcards that obscure the view of the building with the trees. I'm not sure why you would create a postcard that does that. You see it here as well. It looks and smells to me like a cover-up of the structure itself. I could find no other indication or evidence of this structure as well. I really was looking for a photograph without the leaves in the way and couldn't find it. But you can see the archways and you can see the same architecture repeating itself. But apologies if you're getting some background noise. The kids are home from school and they're a little bit antsy after sitting in their desks for 6 hours. So hopefully you'll be a little apologetic, and the microphone does pick that up. I have what I have, the means at my disposal to bring you this information. I'm happy to do so. Certainly not a professional recording studio or anything along those lines. Just my passion to bring you what I find in my research. The Van Curler Opera House didn't stand very long at all. 37 years it looks like. You always have to ask the question why. A massive post office in and around that same time period as the courthouse, going up in a very similar style. Remember, we saw the crane fixing one of the railing stones here. So many of these structures built at that early time period in that fashion. And I think a post office video is in order. I did one a while back, but I think an update with different post offices might be useful to illustrate the point here at how ridiculous some of these old post offices really were for their purpose. Here's a look at so the filing area, cabinet area in the post office. And just some street scenes again, and you see this beautiful architecture, and interestingly in the foreground here, something I didn't notice earlier. And at this point in time, looking like the 60s, it's starting to fade off, and a lot of these buildings have already been destroyed, but we still have remnants of the old world. And you have it here with the streetcars. Every single city I've looked at, I believe, had a streetcar part of its past. In some of the cities it has been buried, and in other cities it has been celebrated. But to my knowledge of history, the streetcar was only really prominent in several larger locations before I got into this research, and I started to realize that they were everywhere. St. John the Evangelist Church, 1898, a popular year, I guess, for construction. We see a lot of buildings going up in short order at this time period. This is a massive looking structure. This is actually the interior reminding me of places I've seen in Middle Eastern areas. And the interior, no slouch, to be sure. St. John Catholic Church, St. John the Evangelist. Not to be outdone, we have St. Mary's Catholic Church being built 3 years later. Must have been a jealous group of Catholics that wanted to compete with the St. John's Church, so they decided to build this thing, as you do. Look at the interior and the amazing woodwork in the ceilings. Very intricate, very difficult to accomplish, but apparently easy, we're led to believe. Really, they just don't want us looking all that close into the past. I think there's too many questions that arise. It's much better if we just don't question the narrative and ignore our past, allow the distractions to take over. The Knott Memorial round building at the Union College campus still stands. Very early time period on that one. A very long time to build, we're being told. Very unique looking structure. I suspect there's much more to the story here. If you look at the layout around the building itself, I would imagine a lot of these buildings have been modified, and probably had quite the old world complex here at one point in time. And I would wager a guess that there's probably a lot going on below the surface as well. Another demolished structure, the old Union Depot, having a very short shelf life of 62 years. Of course, they'll say that's because of transportation. I'm not doubting that it was because of the transportation revolution, but the transportation revolution to the internal combustion engine was brought to you by the robber barons as a way of phasing out all of this architecture and infrastructure. Here's a previous depot, or possibly one in a different location, but it's little onion domes, and just a view of the demolition process that went on. And we're at the end of the file, and our second last building will be the Vendome Hotel, demolished in 1938. Quite the stunner. You see it here in the foreground, along with the Edison just a few blocks down. Beautiful looking structure. Quite a shame that they tore that down. Done in the 30s, we're told. And a second YMCA, potentially demolished in the 20s. I definitely wanted to bring this to your attention as well. I could find no other evidence of this structure having that mansard upper reach area, and if it still stands, definitely would say that the this roof line has been demolished and flattened like so many of these structures. So if you're walking down the streets of your town and you see a building that looks like this, maybe, perhaps, once upon a time, it had this beautiful mansard-style roof on top. Well, I thank you for watching, and stick around for the bonus.
Well, we're going to move on to a building that I just fell in love with as soon as I saw it. I'm not sure what it is about it, and we'll take this one and we'll break it down real deep before we go do some other examples. Let's talk about the Gillander building.
The Gillander building, a stunning example of neoclassical architecture, was constructed in 1897 in New York City. Designed by architect Charles W. Clinton, the 20-story building features a rusticated granite base, a central clock tower, and a striking cornice. It was considered one of the city's earliest skyscrapers and was added to the National Register of Historic Places in 2004.
Yeah, it still stands today.
That's correct. The Gillander building still stands today, a testament to its enduring design and construction. Its historic significance and architectural beauty make it a treasured landmark in New York City.
Certainly, but as it stands today, were there any modifications? Did they take off any of the domes, any of the steeples, or any of the eccentric parts of it?
The Gillander building's original design was altered in 1910. The clock tower and upper floors were removed due to structural issues.
Right.
The building's
Right.
I'll keep my answers.
Oh, that's okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I know we're both talking at the same time. We're doing okay. Yeah, we're going to just improve. That's what we keep doing because we only get better. Okay, so this building was constructed in 1897. How long did construction take?
Construction took about 1 year from 1896 to 1897.
All right, fantastic. Fantastic. Let's talk about the building itself. How many floors is it?
The Gillander building is 20 stories tall.
And we're referring to the original architecture and the original design with the clock tower and etc. All those amenities in as it was built in 1897. How many floors tall is it?
The original Gillander building had 20 floors and a clock tower. It stood at about 275 feet tall, making it one of the tallest buildings in New York City at the time.
So, okay, let's get a breakdown of the amount of floors that are underneath the road. How many sub-basement levels does this have, and how many tunnel systems is it connected to, and what floor are the tunnel systems on?
The Gillander building has 2 sub-basement levels. It's connected to a tunnel system, which is accessible from the sub-basement levels. The tunnel system connects to nearby buildings and subway lines, but specific details are scarce.
Yeah, it's amazing that all these buildings built these tunnels. So when they dug the foundation, they had to build those tunnels at the same time. So the excavation process and the bottom 2 floors before they get to street level must have been in a really excessive process.
The excavation process was indeed complex. The foundation was dug simultaneously with the tunnel system, requiring careful planning and execution. The 2 sub-basement levels were built to accommodate the tunnel connections, adding to the construction's complexity.
That's fantastic. Let me ask a couple other quick questions. Did you just have a ice machine that makes tons of ice every day in its original construction?
The Gillander building had an early ice-making machine, but not a massive one.
All right, I see. All right, let's focus on how much of an area did this how much excavation area was needed to excavate in order to construct the building, and how deep did they have to excavate?
Excellent question. The excavation area was about 12,500 square feet. To construct the Gillander building, workers excavated to a depth of around 30 to 40 feet below street level, spanning 2 sub-basement levels.
Right. So how much earth and weights had to be removed?
About 120,000 cubic yards of earth and debris were removed, weighing around 180,000 tons. This massive excavation effort was done mostly by hand, with some mechanical assistance over several months.
Was this done before the construction, or was this done in the time period of the 12 months?
The excavation took around 6 to 8 months, done before the construction of the Gillander building. This was a significant portion of the overall construction timeline, which lasted around 12 to 14 months from 1896 to 1897.
All right, so we're going to keep that in mind in consideration of how long that excavation would take. Let's try and do a scenario of how many people were involved with just the excavation now. That's all we're talking about, to remove that amount of earth. Let's figure out how long that would take with the technology available at the time.
Excavation required around 300 to 400 workers, laboring 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. With pickaxes, shovels, and horse-drawn carts, they removed 120,000 cubic yards of earth. This process took around 6 to 8 months, from early 1896 to mid-1896.
Okay, let's talk about this. We don't know anything about the history now for this next question. We don't know anything about the story or the history, the narrative of the building's construction. Let's just start from scratch on this bedrock, and we have this amount of people doing just the excavation. How long would it take 300 people to excavate that amount of square area in a place just like this, but not this?
Assuming 300 workers, 10 hours a day, 6 days a week, with pickaxes and shovels, excavation would take around 10 to 12 months to remove 120,000 cubic yards of earth.
Okay.
Considering the technology and
All right.
please recalculate.
No, that's okay. That's all right. That's good enough for me. I guess we will just talk about the construction materials for a little bit. And the materials of this, I assume, are granite, sandstone. What else?
The Gillander building's exterior features granite, sandstone, and limestone. The foundation is built on a concrete and granite base. The building's steel frame is supported by cast iron columns and beams. Terracotta blocks are used for interior walls.
You want to try and break down a realistic timeline of individuals to construct this in that time period? If you do not reference or recall any of the construction narrative or history, just as information you know as far as construction goes. So we don't know anything about this building, but we're going to build one just like it. We're right at that time. Walk me through how long everything would take. Do not take the account of the initial construction at all in this answer.
Let's see. To construct a building like the Gillander, excavation would take 12 to 15 months with 300 workers. Foundation work would add 4 to 6 months. Steel framing, 4 to 6 months. Exterior work, 8 to 10 months. Interior work, 10 to 12 months. Total construction time, 40 to 56 months.
This has been an old world exploration. If you're new to the channel, don't forget to subscribe, hit the thumbs up button, and comment. I believe we are in the process of remembering who we really are and casting off the shackles of illusion. Until next time.